This is the Literary Licensed Podcast with your hosts, Vicky Ray, John Wilson, and Keith Shorgo. Discussing book to screen and everything in between. Coming at you from the UK and USA.
They keep it real.
Castle Dracula?
Yes, that's where I'm going.
To the castle?
Yes.
No.
Dracula is in the house. In the house?
Rest is good for the blood.
Santa just told the line. The rest of us are out of reach. Everybody party time. Some of us will never sleep again. Dracula, 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 Dracula. Santa just told the line. The rest of us are out of reach. Everybody party time. Some of us will never sleep again. Dracula, 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 Dracula.
But you tell me that he escaped from his room. He's gone for hours. Where does he go?
sense to yourself.
No, Renfield. But then, if Dracula were a vampire, he'd have to return every night to Transylvania.
And that's impossible.
Then he must have brought his native soil with him. Boxes of it. Boxes of earth large enough for him to rest in.
Renfield, what are you doing there? Come here.
Hello, welcome to Literary License Podcast. Today we'll be discussing Dracula, the famous Gothic novel by Bram Stoker and the 1931 Universal monster classic, Dracula. And before we get started, let's find out who's with us today. And of course, there's only two of us, and we have with us John Wilson. Say hello, John.
Hello, folks.
And myself, Keith. So before we get started, let's find out what we've been up to. So, John, what have you been up to since last time we've spoken to you?
I have not been up to much. I mean, I'm trying to enjoy the summer now that there is a summer here in New York. And, you know, I got through most of my binge-worthy stuff in my DVR. So all the summer stuff is all, all the spring stuff is all done. So now I'm just starting to binge watch some stuff on Netflix. I started watching Slasher, which is a new season. If you have not watched the show, it's freaking amazing and bloody and gory. It's so but yeah, just binging stuff on Netflix and trying to enjoy the summer while I have it.
And myself, I started watching Pose from the recommendation of yourself, John. So I watched the first 4 episodes and I'm enjoying it. Though I do find a little bit of problems with it, but I do like it.
Yeah.
My problem basically is the guy who's like this fantastic dancer. I don't think he's that good of a dancer. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's okay. I agree with you on that because I was kind of waiting because he has this moment where he's up there performing and I was like waiting for like something amazing to happen.
Yeah.
And then he kind of finishes and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm missing something or maybe I'm just not a dancer and I'm not getting what was so amazing about that because it wasn't.
No.
Yeah.
I'm a previous dancer, so I was like going, okay.
My favorite character is definitely Angel. I love Angel. She's amazing. Yeah.
The only other outside of some of the social justice stuff that goes on in it, sometimes I think it's slightly too blatant, which I quite like. I like messages, but I kind of like them like layered, not like face sort of thing. But that's quite good. I think the only other problem I basically have is that the transsexuals are too polished. Agreed,
yeah.
Because, if you're looking at the time period, the hormones weren't that great. And we have the one storyline where the new dead mother, I'll call her, I can't remember her name. I want to call her Mimi, but I know that's not her name.
No, it's, oh my God, why am I forgetting her name? Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And and she's one of the storylines is that they won't serve her in a gay bar because she's transsexual. And the thing is, you look at her and it's like you wouldn't even know that she's transsexual. And I mean, it's kind of weird because when I was watching it, I looked up the page about it and stuff like this and realized that they are all real transsexuals. And I was quite amazed because you had never known. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, because obviously they've been living their lives for quite a while, so they're quite into their skins now and into their identities and who they are. They're not, sort of thing. So
I like how I think the reason why they bring that up is because something I think most of the gay community doesn't know, like this younger generation of the gay community doesn't know there was a rift between the trans community and the gay community and even lesbian. So like, and it's less, but I think back then, it's kind of talking about blatant. It's like in your face, like the fact that they would throw her out because, you don't belong here. It kind of is, hey, you went through that before where you didn't belong there. And so it's just very interesting. I thought that actress, by the way, is fantastic.
Yeah, she's very good.
There's a few movie moments. You haven't gotten to like the final whatever, but there's just some really great moments, and I'm really looking forward to season 2, which I think starts next week.
Yeah, and Patty the Pone's going to be in it, so that'd be quite good to watch.
Yeah. So,
and then what else? I started watching Star Trek in your recommendation. I've watched 3 of them, so for me, it's. I'm not going to make any judgments at the moment, but I like the idea that it's running like a soap opera. It's a continuation story, which I quite like. It's not like alien of the week sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm keeping my options open on that one, but I'm in parts of me are enjoying it, and other parts of me are like so I'll let you know when I finish the first season and when I get into the second season.
Yeah, and it also
I'm intrigued to watch it though. So
I would say it pivots mid-season, and when it pivots, you're like, oh, and then once it pivots, you're kind of like, oh, this is interesting. Because at first, I was the same way. I was a little apprehensive. I'm a huge Trekkie, so like watching it, I was like, my biggest dip in it is like the technology. And the fact that the technology is so good for the past, and you're like, this doesn't make sense. And they kind of, again, it's just something that you kind of just have to go along with it and say, okay, well, let's see where they take it. And they take it in a way that it's believable. It's not where you're like, oh, well, that's just stupid. That doesn't make any sense. I forget what, I just watched something and I was like so annoyed. Oh, it was the movie with, oh my God, Johnny Depp, where it was like something to do with technology and his brain pattern being put into a server.
Okay.
Annihilation, I think it's called, or no.
I keep away from Johnny Depp now.
I mean, the movie, the concept was interesting because it's basically, and he's in it, but it's more about like how your brain, if you're able to take your brain patterns, you're able to download your brain into a server, is that your soul, right? And so if you can retain all the qualities of your memories and everything like that, and then put it on a server, is it preserving your soul, or is it something else? Is it artificial intelligence, right? So they kind of go into this realm, and it was great up until the end. And I was like, oh, I'm like, my friends were like, just watch it. I'm like, no, I'm annoyed because now I'm a sci-fi guy and this doesn't make sense. Like you went this far and then now it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I find lately as far as films are concerned, there's a lot of sloppy script writing going on at the moment. It's just kind of like, everything seems to be based on concept, but there's not really like strong lines or a strong script. I can't remember the last time there have been quotable lines from any movie. It has nothing recent, which is quite surprising. Yeah. And let's see what else. So I went to Bilbao and just got back last night. Got in about 2:00 in the morning. But that was quite nice. The weather was lovely. Spending with my Spanish family, which was lovely. And I finished watching Dead to Me on Netflix, which I loved.
I saw like a little trailer for it, and I was curious. I might actually watch it. There's also another one that just came out with Renee Zellweger that looks interesting.
The Dead to Me is only like 25 minutes each episode.
Oh, that's good. So it's a quick watch.
Well, what's interesting me about it, I mean, Christina Applegate's one of these actresses I never really thought much of, but I'm actually thinking more and more of her as years go by, because she's actually turned out quite a few very good performances. And of course, her turn as Sweet Charity on Broadway actually kind of made me a slight fan of her. So my fandom for her is growing stronger. And it has Linda Cardellini in it, which the only thing I know her from, I know that she was in ER, but working in a hospital, I really don't watch hospital dramas. It's like bringing work home, so I just don't watch them. But Linda Cardellini, I remember loving her in the Scooby-Doo movies because she was Velma and she was fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
But she's in this and she's brilliant. Yeah. And James Marsden's in it as well. So that was quite good. And other than that, now catching up on stuff for the podcast and getting interviewing a lot of people for season 3, which will be coming your way. We'll have more news on that probably next month, really, and let the fans know about what's going on there. But other than that, living my life. So
nice.
Yeah. So I guess before we get started, let's give you a quick synopsis of the book Dracula. Dracula is a book by Bram Stoker. It was written in 1897. It's a Gothic horror novel, and it introduced the character of Count Dracula. Before this, vampires didn't really have a strong identity within, at that time, modern horror fiction or Gothic horror fiction. And it was not until Bram Stoker did Dracula and based it on Vlad the Impaler and brought in these things like garlic the crucifix and things like that, that they actually became staples over a period of time for the vampire genre. This is like the granddaddy of all vampire novels. And another interesting thing about this is actually a book that actually turned things on its head as far as storytelling. Before this, whether you're looking at Shakespeare or whether you're looking at Edgar Allan Poe, or if you're even looking at other classic Gothic horror novels around this time, everything was kind of done through a straight narrative. If you're looking at Jane Eyre, or if you're looking at Wuthering Heights, or the Bronte sisters, as we just discussed there, or even Jane Austen's books of Finding Mr. Right,
Pride and Prejudice. Yeah.
All those kind of. I hate things. But
you don't love Pride and Prejudice?
No, I don't actually. I find it incredibly boring. I just find it so utterly
exhaustingly boring.
It was, and it is considered a vampire literature, horror fiction, and Gothic novel, and an invasion literature. And of course, the novel has spawned numerous theatrical films and television interpretations. In this episode, we're going to be discussing the novel, and we're going to be discussing the first Dracula film. Now, of course, we're going to leave out Nosferatu because that's probably more closely related to Dracula, but we're going to deal with just Dracula and not Nosferatu. So that's the reason why we're doing 1931. Of course, next episode, we will be covering Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, which we'll probably be covering some of the same things in the books because Vicky's a huge fan of this and she cannot be with us. So, John, do no ado. What are your thoughts about the book Dracula?
I mean, I really like it. I think it's something that if anyone is reading it, just know, and I think, Keith, you mentioned this before, it's literally like a book about found footage and how it literally all just kind of comes together, and it's told through a bunch of diaries and letters, and it's so you have to kind of be patient with that. I think that's just something that's a unique style of writing that very few people can appreciate. I appreciated it because I think it was something that, especially if you're, it's one thing if you're reading it, but I also got the audiobook, which is fantastic. It has a bunch of character actor voices that are in it, and it's just fantastic to hear a character read something like Nina, where she's talking in her voice, but then all of a sudden she then refers to Dr. Shaw, and she kind of goes into the voice of Dr. Shaw. Now, that in itself is a talent, but like reading it as well, it's very interesting. You kind of ebb and flow between what I'm saying, like, Dear Diary, I'm going to count my day, to not only am I going to count my day, but then this is what this person said, and then saying it in their voice, and then coming back, and then my thoughts on what they said. So it's a lot of back and forth and ebb and flow, and you just have to have a patience for that. And I just really appreciate the level of detail, especially within the mythos of what vampires are. I think it's something that now I see the sort of groundwork of how many people like Anne Rice and Laura Clay Hamilton and other authors who wrote about vampires, where they get that starting base from. And I loved it. I thought it was a great book.
I mean, what I found quite bizarre is I never actually really thought about it, but I mean, it actually takes place in a small period of time. It takes place from the 3rd of May until the 6th of November, which is quite interesting because it starts out and it's basically Mina writing a letter to her best friend Lucy, and then it kind of just slowly unfolds. It's like a flower. It's like spring going into fall. Like, and then it blooms. The novel blooms, and then it dies as the winter comes. And I kind of love the imagery and stuff like this. Like you, I did do the book as well. I mean, the audiobook as well. I did the audiobook up until the last 2 chapters because I was running short of time, and I realized I could actually read faster than the audiobook was going. Yeah. But the audiobook is fantastic. I think we did the same one, the one with Tim Curry and Alan Cummings.
Yeah, Alan Cummings, yeah. I mean, it's really, really fantastic. I love it. And especially just the different variations of the English, the Cockney, no, and like it's really great how these. I'm curious, like now, because I've been in a studio where I've seen studio work for television, but I'd be like curious to be in a studio for an audiobook and to see how long a person goes without having to do a take, right? Do they just continuously read on? Because it's a lot of work and a lot of like knowing the inflections, especially like I personally, the only voice I couldn't stand and it was driving me crazy was Lucy.
Yeah.
It was so eloquent, and I was like, oh my God, this like stop.
Well, I think, to be honest, I found that Lucy's voice kind of fit who she was for me. I guess it has to do because Lucy's kind of a wet character and she's very flirtatious. She thinks that every man wants her. And so many men are gathered at her feet. And she's kind of like the Valley Girl of England, of London. Like
true. And then they don't even, at the beginning, they don't even have names. They're like man A, man B. And I'm like, what the hell? How many men do you have?
Because, oh, Mina. I just felt today that all my male suitors just sat around me and adored me, and I just didn't know which one to pick. And as Mr. B came up to me, I just sat there and flirted to him. But of course, he's from America, and when they come from America, he has this rough but gentle tone to his voice. And I just sat there and fluttered as he went away. But he knows I was going to be married to somebody else. But then Mr. C came along, and that again, my heart became a flutter. Oh, no. Okay, Lucy, you slut. Lucy's a slut.
Lucy is fully a slut. I mean, come on. She and by the way, I love the judgmental tone from Nina, and she knows she's a slut. She's like, in this bitch. Well, Lucy is at it again.
Well, and this is another thing that I didn't realize about this novel, because I'm so used, I'm the 1931 Dracula, of course, I've seen this numerous times. I've seen other versions of Dracula and stuff like this. But reading the novel, I didn't realize that Mina is such a feminist heroine.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
She's not a victim at all.
No.
And I mean, they try to make her a victim. She's like, fuck this shit. No way. No. I'm the only one that knows everything that's going on. And she's the one that's got clued all in. And the guys are kind of scrambling around, not quite knowing what the hell to do.
Yeah, she's the one who actually decides to kind of piece everything together. And she kind of asks, like, can I get everything so we can kind of work this through and figure out what really is going on? And yes, it is for her love, Jonathan, but I think it's more for her own peace of mind because of especially what happens, spoiler alert, what happens to like Lucy, it literally lights a fire in her to be like, I think I need to figure this out because I can't just think, that my friend just died the way she died miserably and we need to know why. And
without Mina, we wouldn't have the book, which is kind of weird. I mean, I know it's written by Bram Stoker, but when spoiler alert, you find out it's actually Mina that puts everything together. And Mina's actually, when she figures out everything out, she's the one that contacts everyone. She types everything out so everyone can read it. And she's like, and the thing is, this is before mimeographing, okay, people. This is before. She's typed numerous copies of everything, and you're like everything that you read that she typed numerous copies and sent out. Gave to people, and you're thinking, she was one hell of a fast typist. I could say that much for her.
There was a line where she was just saying, she's like, oh, I haven't done it in a while, but I'm going to go ahead and she basically, it's almost like she's trying to underscore how good she is at doing what she does because it's like, and I just gave them everything. And I was like, wow, that was quick. So you're like, you haven't done this in a while. Now you're done.
Well, another thing I found quite interesting is that with Lucy's death, and of course it brings all her suitors together. And of course they all show up at her house and she knows everything about these people, but they don't know that she knows anything.
Yeah.
And the way that she handles that, I've thought to myself, there's a new heroine on the horizon and it's Mina. I don't know, they make these movies about Van Helsing and they make these movies about Dracula and they make these movies about, where they take, Harker's character and turn him into some kind of like weird superhero kind of things in other versions of films. But they missed the point. It should be Mina should have her own series. I mean, Mina is the one for me. That took me by surprise, actually. I was not expecting that at all.
I mean, It's funny because I was like, the Pride and Prejudice and Zombies series, that author, what's the author's name?
Jane Austen.
No, Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Okay.
That author should remake this and truly make her like the heroine of the story, not Van Helsing. Like, I think, I think it's interesting. He was sort of like, to me, a very ancillary character who relied on her. In the sense, like, even when they're kind of like the final countdown, the final showdown, Nina was the one that was like, I have to go. Like, I have to be a part of this, and I have to be here's why I need to be there. And he's just kind of like, okay, you heard the lady. And you're like, meanwhile, Jonathan's like, don't, my darling, please don't. I need you safe, and he's like, nope, she's got it. Like, she's fine. She'll actually protect you.
Well, another thing is, like, we get Jonathan Harker's character, and okay, he shows up at Dracula's castle at the very beginning, and it's quite interesting because then we get the vamps, which, for Victorian, lust. I mean, this must have been quite racy for its time. I mean, because these women's sexuality is really to the fore. These vamps of his, and of course, Dracula's like, well, keep away from him. Sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. He's mine.
He's mine. And I found it's quite interesting that when you get to Harker's part of it, and then it kind of unfolds, and you're like reading what is happening, and then, and then the way Dracula is presented, and I think this is where we kind of get, and this is kind of weird here because when we get into the 1931 film, they changed things a little bit here, which I'm not quite understanding, but we'll get more to that. But even the Bram Stoker's Dracula, when we first get Dracula, we get, the Gary Oldman's version of it, sort of thing. But the Dracula that we get in the book is actually a lot more, to me, I guess, if I was going to put him into modern terms as far as something, to me, I was picturing Poltergeist 2, the Reverend guy.
Oh my God, yeah, because he's older. Yeah, that's older, and kind of
like the skin was like crawled against. I mean, it's like his skin was translucent over his bones, and it's almost like the skin was like drying on his bones, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the version I got. And the only thing I could think of in modern terms, I guess, would be burying it in the seas. Come on, Carol Ann.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that because you wonder where the romanticized version of him came because if you're using this sort of as a pedestal to where all other vampire writers write from, the romanticized version of Dracula is like, I want to suck your blood. Like, and he's more like, dapper and debonair and like alluring. And it doesn't, in this, it kind of says that it's his powers. Like, that's what makes him do this or is capable of luring people in. But I think I'm so used to sort of that, handsome, suave character who lures you in type of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's kind of it's kind of weird because Dracula just appears. His essence is felt throughout the rest of the novel. Of course, we get that fantastic newspaper clipping of what happens at Whitby, with the ship coming in and during the storm. And I thought Bram Stoker did a fantastic job with the newspaper clipping and how it all happened. And then you get, the seduction of Lucy, where Lucy's sleepwalking and, and Amina's there. But I did also found funny that, she finds Lucy in the cemetery on top of the hill in Whitby. And the guy, Bram Stoker, describes Whitby excellently well. If you ever come to London, or come to England, go to Whitby. Whitby is exactly what it is on the stage. Everything still stands there. The whole place has been untouched since the 1890s.
Wow.
All the inns are there, and it's a beautiful place. But I also found funny that, she goes out, she's barefoot, and then she's bringing Lucy back, and she has to cover her toes in mud so people won't think she's outside barefoot. So people think she's wearing shoes.
I mean, well, and that's, to me, the woman can't even stay dressed, like that's what you're carried about, like her shoes. Because it's like, well, nope, oh, her clothes are still, this is how she determined whether or not she left. Oh, her clothes are still here. Oh, but maybe she left.
And I thought it was quite. And there's just so many layers to the book. I mean, it's like one of my new favorite books. After reading this, I mean, before it's like it's one of those things like, oh, I should read it. I should read it. I should read it. Never got around to it until now. And I have to there to say that I'm kind of kicking myself that I didn't actually get around to reading this before.
Yeah, I agree. You know, it's one of these things too. It chronicalizes events that happen, but from different perspectives. And so I think it's very interesting that as you're reading along and you're kind of going through each different story, like the ship log, when they talk about the ship log and the events that happen on the ship, and then the actual newspaper article, it kind of is like two different perspectives of the events of what has occurred. And you're wondering like, where are we going with this, or why are we approaching this? And then you realize, oh, this is why. Like, you know, when you get into the Renfield character, Dr. Shaw, and his observations of Renfield, and like it's very interesting, but you're kind of like wondering, well, what does this have to do? And then you go, oh yeah, so you now see he's being lured, and then it's like the characters start to eventually converge together. So Shaw and I was going to say Nosferatu.
Stewart.
Shaw and Van Helsing and Mina, they all kind of converge together and kind of start to compare their events. They, you know, Mina is like, do I really have to share my logs? And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, we need to kind of figure out what's going on. And then it's sort of like, well, we know because we've read what you've wrote. So it's kind of like now they're going to be in the know. And it's kind of interesting writing because, again, you're getting these different perspectives kind of converging together to tell the events of what had happened. And of course, in that time period when people write, when authors write, it's met with such a level of infliction of like, oh, I have to tell you the amazing, miraculous, you know, event that just occurred. But before you get there, it's like, it was a lovely autumn day and we were walking in the park, and you're like, just get to the event.
Yeah.
But they always start with something really amazing happened. But let me go back.
Which I guess it kind of reflects the way that we, you know, when we go into films and stuff like this, and anyone's writing in their diary, they kind of write like that. Oh, something really amazing happened. You know, when you ever see someone in a film writing in their diary, and then they then they go into what it is. It's kind of, maybe they got it from this book. Maybe this is like diary writing 101.
Yeah.
And I never kept a journal or a diary myself.
How to acquiesce 101.
I kind of wish I kept a diary or a journal because it'd be quite fun to read back on it, but I didn't. So
I have. I mean, I've written since 13 or 14, so I have journals, different journals of periods, not obviously day to day. I laugh because there was a mention where it was like, well, it's been 2 days, 2 long days since I've written in my journal. I'm like, girl, like 2 days? It's been like 5 months. Like,
yeah, I know.
Who the hell has time? Oh, wait, never mind.
I also liked what they did with Renfield's character because I said before, my whole version of Dracula is through films and stuff like this. And of course, you know, after the commercial break, we will go into the film. But I didn't realize how rich a character Renfield really is because, you know, you get page upon pages about his madness and everything like this. But then, you know, when Mina visits him, and then when a couple of other people visit him, he switches it on a dime, and he's like one of the most intelligent people. And I like like Dr. Stewart's like, oh, what? It's like,
yeah. And the fact where he's talking about souls and things like that, and how they think he's crazy, and then it kind of dawns on him that it's like they see that it's like he's protecting someone, and every time he goes to mention something, I think it's like drink, like, right? He goes to mention drink, and he stops himself, and they're kind of trying to catch him, but he's so good at like blocking and tackling, like, oh, let's talk about this, and it makes him look like he's crazy, you know, his spiders or his rats or whatever, you know. But then it's actually him trying to protect his master. And
the clues are all there. Blood is life. Life is blood.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, and then when it all comes together, it's like you find yourself as a reader going, oh my God, I understand why all this is here. It's in front of like, okay, you know, you kind of on the audio. I mean, I think that because the audiobook, I'm sure that if I was reading it, I probably would start skimming a little bit. But because the audiobook, I was like, listening, and actually was following along with the book as well. And so I absorbed quite a bit. And I'd sit there and say that, yeah, it all kind of comes through. And I found that with Lucy's impending death, it is a long process. It doesn't just happen like in a couple nights. It's a long process. And then you got this process then you got this extra layer of Lucy's mom dying. At the same time, she's got this disease that she's dying. Mm-hmm. And then you got Lucy, and then, and then you got, and I like the way that they take in like religious things, like the religious wafers, and they put them around the windows along with the garlic flowers and all this kind of stuff. And I thought to myself, I think this is where, after reading this, I figured that the film industry have missed a lot of stuff, a lot of little magic things that they could have used, which they didn't really use.
Yeah, like the lore of it all. And I thought what's interesting about that process of Lucy is that I really think that Van Helsing really didn't know to the extent of what was going on. He had clues as to what was going on, and he sort of knew these are the kind of steps that I need to take, but it kept getting frauded, and he couldn't understand, well, what am I missing, right? Because this works, right? I know this has worked in the past. What am I missing? And I love that the use of blood, like her suitor, what's his name? She used a couple actually, Garth, and then what was the other one?
Lord Goddamn Morris.
Yeah, so she used a couple of them to kind of revitalize her blood, but I think it was her actual fiance was like, but the question is, where is the blood going? And you're kind of like, oh my God, right? You're right. Where is the blood? And you would think, as a person who knows, and then Helsing's like, I don't know. You're like, oh, I don't know. That's a good question. And it's like, yo. But I love that this sort of final pivotal scene of what happens with her. That was really intense for me, because I think I've only been witness to it via the movies of what happens, and it's sort of fast. It's like a very fast transition of her becoming a vampire and then that happening.
Yeah, this kind of like a footnote, isn't she? She's like,
yeah. And I think that again, what happens to her mom is heartbreaking. Like she gets scared to death, and then the maids get like drugged out. It's like he basically immobilized them all so that way he can get to her. And I thought it was like, you've been blocking me with all of this stuff, and now I'm just going to come in and take her out.
And I also, one of the highlights for me in the book is the Blue Fur Lady, the newspaper articles about the Blue Fur Lady walking around Hampstead and killing children and sucking life out of children and stuff. And I thought, and at first I didn't quite get it. When I was reading that, I go, what the hell is the Blue Fur Lady? It's like, I don't remember this. And I'm like, and then it all comes across as it's actually Lucy. But I thought, the way that was told was so well done. This is like, oh my God, because even the way that he wrote the newspaper articles, they felt like real newspaper articles, like you're really reading. And that's what I thought was quite amazing. Another thing I found quite bizarre is that there's not a lot of Van Helsing doesn't write a lot for this, and he doesn't write a lot of journals. It's all about things that he said to other people, and people put what he said in their journals.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. It's almost like he's too busy to even write. Well, I mean, he kind of is too busy. He's trying to save this girl's life. But yeah, you're right. You don't hear much from his point of view.
And then we get, then after that whole incident, then Jonathan pops back up on the scene from God knows where. It's taken him forever to get to wherever he's going. And him and Mina get married quickly. She's like, I'm going to marry you quickly before you go away again. Da, da, da. And then, and then you get Jonathan's like, and I thought that was quite interesting about, because you don't really get this on other things about how torn up and how damaged Jonathan is from coming back. Yeah. From everything. So you don't normally get that.
Yeah. I mean, he has PTSD, and that's like one of these things where it's interesting to see, that is, I guess, in a way, yes, she worried about Jonathan and he comes back, and that also sets her on fire too. Like Nina is like, where she's like, oh, you know what? Something's wrong. He's not the same anymore. And I want to help him. And how do I we need to figure out what happened to him in order to help him, and then that kind of sets her off too as well. I forgot about that. Yeah.
And then from that moment on, it pretty much starts getting pretty graphic. I was quite surprised how graphic it was gotten. It was like, whoa.
Yeah, well, I mean, him having to also, Van Helsing having to explain. I mean, can you imagine having to explain to someone that you're like, you love someone, you're like, by the way, you have to chop their head off, you have to shove their mouth garlic. You're like, what? Excuse me?
Stuff for communion wafers down their throat, literally down their neck.
Yeah, like, good Lord.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I also like the idea that he needed 50 boxes of earth with him to be able to resettle. Dracula did. Because
I don't know if it was. I think it was like he needed the dirt or the soil for himself, but I don't think it was just for him. I think it's for his potential population.
But I mean, that to be in order, but he needs soil from where he died to travel with him. It can't just be any soil. I thought that was quite an interesting take. So it's like, so when you get to vampire lore and all this other stuff, they tend to write this out because I guess that'd be quite difficult whether you have Interview with a Vampire or the many other or Angel from Buffy or whatever like that, meaning that wherever he goes he has to carry this box of soil with him.
Well, that actually, it's funny because the show The Strain did that. I mean, the vampire character used his own dirt, and he had to travel with it. Yeah, it's really weird.
And then we get to basically, the closing in of Dracula, because there always seem to be about 5 or 6 steps behind him until the very end. And this is the only criticism I have of the book is that it was over very quickly. The death of Dracula was quick.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in the original novel, they kind of, I think they took out, or not the, oh no, I'm thinking now of the film, never mind. Because in the film, I think they gave it where it's like tied to the land where the whole castle collapses around them.
That's
so
the original ending for the book. Bram Stoker took that out of the original.
Oh, he did? Okay, because I couldn't remember that. Yeah, so he took that out, and I just remember being like, well, that's interesting because it's almost like the land is part of what he is. It's almost like, if you kill him, it kind of makes everything else disappear. And so it kind of, you start to doubt whether vampires really exist. You're kind of like, nothing's around anymore,
Yeah. But I did saying that, I did like the way that, you got the 4 points of the compass closing in on Dracula. You got them from the north, the south, the east, and the west, and they're all closing in sort of thing. Yeah. As, the person, meanwhile.
The cavalry.
Yeah, the cavalry all closing in, and you get like all your important characters, and of course Quincy dies, which but it's kind of weird because Quincy really didn't have a part. Really, he's kind of like the red shirt person from Star Trek.
Yeah, he's the guy in the background that, oh yeah, you're holding the axe, thanks.
Yeah. It's kind of like that, so it's going okay. But then we get the epilogue that's like takes place 7 years later, where Jonathan and Mina name their son, after all the 4 characters of who fought Dracula, sort of thing. I guess was quite nice.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like because you have to have that ray of hope of, oh, look, we all, fight on. I think one of the things I thought was interesting too is, again, Mina, the fighter that she is, and how she basically says, or she makes Jonathan promise, like, you have to kill me if the time comes. Like, if I turn and I become something that I don't want to be, or that's something that can do harm to someone else, you have to kill me. And it is that what you're willing to sacrifice, type of thing. And I just remember reading that going, yeah, she's like the final girl. Like, she kind of knows what she has to do in order to kind of get this job done, even if it means her life,
But I mean, apparently Lucy is only 19 years old.
Oh, interesting.
So she's 19.
I thought she was like 20 something.
No, she's 19-year-old aristocrat, and she's Mina's best friend, where Mina is a school teacher.
Yeah, so I remember that because I remember she was like a little bit older. Yeah.
But I have to say that, yeah, I have, fond memories of this book now, which, I mean, it's ingrained in my brain now, so for whatever good or not. I like the idea that they brought in Vlad the Impaler. I think that's quite interesting by bringing like a little bit of history into the full lore, which the vampires didn't have before. They were just kind of there.
Yeah.
And I think that what's quite interesting is I reviewed a book and I can't remember the author, but the name of the book is called Stoker Wilde. And it's about the relationship between Bram Stoker and Oscar Wilde, but it's done from a fiction thing. So basically is these two are in Ireland together, and they don't like each other. And I think, and they're in love with the same woman, but they become friends because they found out this werewolf, and one of them gets attacked by a werewolf, and they fight it off. And then Oscar Wilde falls in love with this guy who falls in with the vampire cult, and it's totally fiction. It basically shows like how Oscar Wilde came to write like the picture of Dorian Gray and how Bram Stoker wrote Dracula. But it's done
how funny!
But it's all done through letters. And
that's really funny.
Format with Dracula, and I say it was one of the. I read it about 2 months ago, and it was It was given to me to review. It was a fantastic book called Stoker Wilde. I highly suggest people buy it because it was really good. But and I read it and I really enjoyed it. And then after reading Dracula, of course, a couple months later, I was like, oh, okay, now this makes sense why this format was like this sort of thing.
Yeah, I was actually surprised too with Stoker that he had kind of died broke. Like you would think that this novel would have had its sort of acclaim, but it didn't really reach its acclaim until like the 20th century when, via films and other notoriety and things like that. But it was like, as I was kind of reading some research or doing some research about Stoker, I was like, oh, well, that's kind of sad. And then there was like a copyrights issue too that he had where it was placed in the public domain for over 50 years, so until like 1962, I think is when it finally kind of fell out of that. So it's really interesting.
Well, I mean, apparently he wrote a short story called Dracula's Guest, which was posthumously published in 1914, 2 years after Stoker's death. Follows an unnamed Englishman traveler as he wanders around Munich before leaving for Transylvania. I've never read it. Doesn't really say much here. And then in 2009, his great grandnephew, Dacre, well, it looks like Dracula Stoker, but that's not his name. It's Dacre, Dacre Stoker, wrote Dracula the Undead, which was another official sequel. And then, of course, Dracula Stoker and J.D. Barker, trading on, great-great-granduncle's name, wrote Dracula, which is a prequel of Dracula, which came out in 2018, sorry. So, yeah. So it looks like the Stoker family are still trading on the Dracula name.
That's good. I mean, because it kind of keeps it alive. And there was other stories written before this as well that sort of people, I guess there are those who said that there was a little bit of, could he have pulled from these other writers like Carmilla, which is is it Vampire? Vampyre? Yeah. Vampire. Yeah. So like these books were written before this book, and I think people were wondering, did he pull from that? He said that he got a lot of his inspiration via, Vlad the Impaler, which again killed over 40 to 100,000 European civilians, mainly by impaling. I mean, you get a name for a purpose, and that's pretty much it, folks.
Wow. Interestingly enough, there's also, well, she's known, I can't remember what her real name is, but there's about 200 years after Vlad, there's a Baroness, they call her Baroness Dracula, but that's not her real name. And it's a true story about she was a baroness, and she used to bathe in virgin blood to keep herself young. So she women there, and she would drain them and then bathe in their blood.
Well, she wouldn't have got Lucy, I'm telling you that much. Because Lucy was a whore.
I mean, there's quite a lot of interesting things about Stoker as well. I mean, Stoker, at the time that he wrote this, was he was the theater director for the Lyceum Theater. And at that time, there was this actor. He was a famous, he was like really famous for his time. Henry Giddings, I think his name is. I might be wrong, but
Henry Irving.
Yeah, Henry Irving. And Henry Irving is the basis of the Dracula look. That's the look he wanted Dracula, because his dream was to have Irvin play Dracula on stage. So he wrote the novel hoping to be turned into a play, which eventually was turned into a play, and it did open at the Lyceum, but Irwin would have no part of it because he was a terribly trained actor, and I'm sorry, but I will not do that part unless it's a Shakespearean role, which I can exceed in. I am not going to do that bit of tosh. Which is
funny because that's where his mannerisms, like as a character Dracula, a lot of the mannerisms of that sort of prestige came through.
Yeah. Which is funny though that they're saying that if Irwin did do it, his name probably would be he would be known today.
Yeah, that's true.
He's now just a footnote about the making of the novel Dracula, where if he did it, he probably would have been something more.
Yeah,
and he probably would have made a name for himself, and it would actually probably have led to, which we'll be talking about after the commercial break, what Dracula became after this. So, before we move on to our commercial break, John, what are your final thoughts of the book Dracula?
Oh, I think it was bloody fantastic. I actually really, like, as you said, Keith, I'm really glad that I read it. I'm surprised I have not read it sooner. It was something that's always been on my list, and I said, oh, this is probably going to be one of these Jane Austen type reads. Yeah. And it wasn't. I mean, in a way it was. I mean, because that's just the style of writing, is the letters, and like you just have to kind of go with that flow, but it's definitely not the acquiescence of youth and love, and there is some of that, but it's more about like this supernatural element, which I completely love. And I love, like I said, how it got into the mythos of vampires, and how I think a lot of people need to take note on this and realize whatever they're doing or moving forward with, that they should kind of go back to this as a blueprint of what vampires are, and how there's a level of complexity about them, especially like the process of turning someone into a vampire. I think it's a one and done, and they use it too frequently to make it easy. I think come back to this book and do some research and do it right.
And myself, I think the book is a must read for any person who's into the horror genre. And I just think that there is a lot to be learned in the style format. I think it gave birth to a lot of things. I think it gave birth to the vampire genre, which is, it is the granddaddy of all vampire books, really. I mean, out of all those books that have survived, this is probably the book that survived about Dracula. It's up there with like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which is another book I haven't read. And I also think that it also is probably the birth of found film footage. I mean, it's kind of like you're reading this, and it is like reading a found film footage script, really, which I found very interesting. And I have to sit there and say that for a book of this time, and even books later on, this probably has one of the strongest female characters who basically has all the brains, and is probably miles ahead of feminism before feminism was even a word. And that's the character, which I was totally floored by. And I think I now have a new favorite, one of my favorite books. It's not my now top of all favorite books, to the point where I was reading it on a Kindle, and I've actually ordered a hardback to put on my bookshelf now. So, did
you order the original with the yellow back? And I was reading that, I was like, wow. I mean, some of those are still in circulation.
Oh yes, I went on eBay and I found it for a mighty low price of £50,000 and 10 shillings.
£50,000.
And I found it to myself. It's like, oh my god, I could pass this down to generations.
Oh, Lucy.
Lucy. So that will brings us through. What we're going to do is cut to a commercial break and the trailer for the 1931 Universal classic Dracula, and we'll be back after a word from our sponsor.
Amazon. Oops, wrong Amazon. Although we both contain an array of diversity, the rainforest with all of its animals and us with all of our products, come check us over today and find all the products you need quickly and efficiently. And buy it with one click. And now you can even use us to donate to your favorite charities using Amazon Smile. Amazon Smile is worth your while. Come check us out today.
I am Dracula.
A moment ago, I stumbled upon a most amazing phenomenon. Something so incredible, I mistrust my own judgment. Look.
Dracula. The very mention of the name brings to mind things so evil, so fantastic, so degrading. You wonder if it isn't all a dream, a nightmare.
Rats. Rats. Thousands. Millions of them.
But no, this is no dream. This is Dracula, the original terrifying story of a maniac and a man who lived after death, lived on human blood, took the form of a vampire bat, and lured innocent girls to a fate truly worse than death.
Dracula? Oh, what's he done to you, dearie? Tell me.
He came to me. He opened a vein in his arm, and he made me drink.
Hello?
What's your favorite scary movie?
I have a bunch of favorite movies. I watch them all on Shudder.com for only $4.99 a month.
That's a scary low price.
But if I had to pick a favorite, it'd probably be Scream.
Oh.
Yeah, it's the only streaming service that lets me watch hundreds of horror movies on demand.
I'll be right back.
Hello? Hello? Hello, are you gonna subscribe? Hello?
Go to Shudder.com to subscribe, if you dare.
Hello, welcome back to Literary License Podcast, and now we'll be discussing the 1931 English language film Dracula, brought to you by Tod Browning, and with Bela Lugosi as the Count. And it was one of the Universal's first horror monster movies, and it also brought Universal back from the collapse because they weren't doing so well. And of course, this would also lead to their famous werewolf pictures, mummy pictures, Creature from the Black Lagoon, etc., etc., etc. So, before any ado, I guess we should talk about the making of Dracula. Do you have anything about the making of the 1931 Dracula, John?
I know that it was based on the 1924 stage version of Dracula by Hamilton Dean. It also had some very noticeable characters like Bela Lugosi, which wasn't the first pick for the director, and I think it was only after they saw him perform on the stage that it kind of was like, oh, this he has what it takes for to be this character. As you were saying before, this definitely for Universal was a launching pad for their dark universe, which was, Frankenstein, the Mummy, the Invisible Man, the Bride of Frankenstein, the Wolfman. I know that it was met mostly with some great reviews. I think it only had some reviews because it was different for that time, especially for those who weren't used to very supernatural elements. You have people, again, women fainting in the audience and passing out, and that actually just made people actually want to see it more. So they were a little concerned, the studio was a little concerned with whether or not it would be successful, but lo and behold, people were running to the box office wanting to know why were women fainting in the aisles from this movie. They originally were going to have a disclaimer at the end of the film. It went something like, "Just a moment, ladies and gentlemen, a word before you go. We hope the memories of Dracula and Renfield won't give you bad dreams. So just a word of reassurance. When you get home tonight and the lights have been turned out and you're afraid to look behind the curtains and you dread to see the face appear in the window, why, just pull yourself together. Remember that after all, there are such things as vampires. So they kind of removed that disclaimer because they were afraid that would create a belief in the supernatural. So I thought that was very interesting. There was also a removal of, which I found very interesting, the death groans of Dracula and Renfield, which eventually Universal put back into the film. So I don't know if they just couldn't deal, or if the audience couldn't deal with the like it was too much for them.
It might have to do with like the production code that was coming out around that time as well.
Yeah,
the Hays production code. Like married
that
couples.
Damn Hays code! I'm telling you, ruined it for all of us.
Married couples couldn't be shown in bed together. They had two separate beds, and one foot had to be on the ground at all times.
I want me to go change and literally go into the room and come out. Oh,
how did they get their kids? No one knew. How they reproduce?
The stork delivered them.
Maybe it counts if one person's both feet are on the ground.
Well, that's Lucy got in trouble because she didn't put her feet on the ground.
I think another thing that's quite interesting, because there are if you do, I would highly suggest buying the Universal Monster Collection on Blu-ray, which is a very good set. It has all, Frankenstein, werewolf, Creature from Black Lagoon, etc., and Dracula, of course. But it has some really interesting documentaries about the making of Dracula, and it actually has some video footage and some stills, because originally Dracula was going to be played by Lon Chaney, which Lon Chaney was just coming off the silent film Phantom of the Opera, which was a huge success, and it's still considered one of the best versions of Phantom of the Opera, far superior than the 1950 remake or 1940s remake. And of course, everyone knows this classic scene where it's that black silent picture thing, and then they take the mask off, and he turns around, and he's got all these teeth, and he's kind of bald and quite frightening looking. Yeah. And the woman kind of screams back and silent horror because it's a silent film. But and apparently he was going to do it, but he was sick, and that's the only thing that stopped him. So that's what led to Bela Lugosi, but the interesting thing with Bela Lugosi is that Bela Lugosi would change the face of vampires forevermore. He made them romantic. He was good looking. Yeah. And that's what changed the vampire, and that's what changed Dracula. Was the simple fact that Lon Chaney did him, and Lon Chaney was going to have this horrible makeup on and stuff like this, and play the vampire, a bit like Nosferatu. Because if you're looking for a closer adaptation to the novel, the 1897 Bram Stoker's Dracula, is actually the silent film Nosferatu. That's the closest one. What we have now is this play version of Dracula, which we'll be going in shortly, which is quite interesting. That one simple cast change because someone was ill would change the look of Dracula forevermore.
I mean, I think it also would change his story, right? Because there is, instead of Jonathan, it's actually Renfield that comes to him at the beginning to acquire about his estate, and has this sort of, I want to say it's a little bit of a homoerotic situation here, because there's an infatuation that both of them have, and obviously Dracula is more for the blood, but I don't think that would have happened had Dracula been this haggard looking thing or creature. I think it would have really changed the context of that relationship right out of the gate. And even there's moments where Dracula goes to London on the express boat and he gets there, and then he's basically in the opera, and so I don't see someone of that ghoulish sort of nature or look would be like a classy vamp. They made him a classy vamp. He was up there and he's hanging out with the socialites and the aristocrats and was blending in with that. I don't think that would have been the same type of story that could have been told in this film.
Well, I think if they went like they did with let's sit there and, first of all, they based it on a play, which I'm not quite sure, because Jonathan Harker is in the play and he's in the film, of course. And I'm not sure why they had Renfield go to the castle. I
think it established that that's how he first took control of him, and they use that as a moment. Yeah. They do have Jonathan in this, but he comes in sort of answerly later. He comes in kind of later as, oh, by the way, here's Nina, and then it's sort of a very quick introduction, like my friend Lucy, and this is Jonathan, and this is, and like they kind of go really quickly through that. And I think they actually lose almost all of Lucy's suitors as well, and it's just she has the one suitor.
Well, they kind of taken Dracula and they've updated it as well. I mean, it's got now it has like this 1920, I guess 19 before, like it has like this before the crash. The stock market crash look to it now. You know, all the women are kind of flappery kind of girls.
Yeah,
but they're though pristine. And yeah, I mean, the thing is, after reading the book and then rewatching this, and I actually watched this afternoon when I got up, and I enjoyed it. I still think it's an excellent movie, because I think there's so many fantastic camera angles and there's so many great images that you do see in this. But some of it's just a bit, I don't know. I'm kind of ruined a little bit of this film. This film used to be one of my favorites, but I'm kind of ruined a little bit after reading the novel now.
I agree, because they take a lot out of it, and I appreciate the fact that they use a lot of scenery versus sets to do the movie, because I feel like you're so used to when you see something, you know it's a set. You could definitely tell that this film is filmed on location in certain areas, just the way it's shot, and even the effects, the certain things they do is a lot of lighting. So what makes Dracula look like he's mesmerizing someone is the way they put the lighting into him. And I think that those are just simple effects that work, you know?
And I think there's a lot of things in the film that does work. I think the three vamp women are really well done. They're kind of sexy, and then, as they're coming out of the crypt and coming towards the camera, and I have to sit there and say that there's a lot of really good striking imagery. Yeah, but I think this has to do with Tod Browning, the director. Actually, I think in any lesser hands, I don't think we'd have this, and it does have that German expressionistic look about it as well. Like the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, the original, and even Nosferatu to a certain extent has that expressionistic look where it's all done shadows, and and then you got even the way this film also establishes a lot, which as far as like all the cobwebs as Dracula's coming down this grand staircase, and there is no there's no really any grand staircase in the original novel. I mean, this is another thing that this movie is perpetrated onto Dracula, which is like you had like the old castle with the great big sprawling staircase down to sort of thing. And of course, in the original novel, what we get, the whole place is decorated. I mean, Dracula's room is well decorated. Okay, there's pile gold in the corners of the room and stuff like this, but there's a bed and there's furnished. But I think I like that it shows like everything has dust on it, as if to allude to the fact that no one's been using any of it, And I like how he goes through the cobwebbing, and then Renfield's behind him, and he's like, "How'd you do that?" Because then he's having to like swipe it out of the way, and I thought that was a great little like, oh, look, she's even showing his powers now. How did he walk through that? And then the little slightly ginormous spider that goes up to the ceiling, which was funny. I was like, oh, look at the little spider. And I also said to say that Renfield's a lot more complicit to the story than he is in the novel. He has a larger part. The simple fact is, like, I mean, they almost put him on a leash, and he's like the hound dog looking for Dracula. It's like, come on, Renfield, find him. Yeah. Off he goes. And I have to say, he's also the voice of him, too, because if you really look at this, Dracula doesn't talk that much. No. Like, he doesn't have that many lines. He has a lot of looks and even, like, posturing, but there's no long episodes of dialogue. It's pretty much, you get little snippets of him. So it is heavily on him being his narrator and being like, here, this is what's going on, and this is what my master is telling me to do. I mean, interestingly enough, Bela Lugosi at this point in time didn't know English. He learned all his lines phonetically, and apparently he learned them phonetically for the stage. And that's probably one of the reasons why he got the parts, because he already knew the lines. So they figured, okay, we can go in this, because this was supposed to be one of these spectacle scale of, like a lavish silent film like Hunchback of Notre Dame and The Phantom of the Opera from 1925. But they had to scale it back because they were falling into some kind of financial difficulties, Universal.
Yeah.
And I think, again, to Tod Browning's credit, I think with the budget he had, I think he did a fantastic job making it look like one of these lavish productions.
Yeah. I think he also he couldn't film where he wanted to. I think he ended up filming in Honduras, or where did he filmed somewhere else. He wasn't able to film where he wanted to because of that budget cut.
But I also have to say that some of the backdrops that they had to use, obviously there's some backdrops being used, the painted backdrops. And I think it gave it that kind of fairy tale feeling to it, which I think helps spur the film forward and kind of gives it that ever probably omnipresent feeling about it that, there's some, you kind of got this, you got this look, it opens up, with Renfield, in the carriage. You got a little bit of comedy going on, and then you see, then he gets on, the carriage goes up, and all of a sudden they pull back, and you actually see the painted thing. It's almost like if we're going from reality, now we're going to a fantasy. So
like into the book, literally.
Yeah, and I quite like that actually. I do think. I think it would have been stronger for me now if Mina was a stronger character, because she's just a victim now, which I thought was kind of sad. That's just this is what, then again, this is what Mina becomes throughout all the other, even when we get, next week when we talk about, the Coppola's version, Mina's still a victim.
Correct.
Mina never stops from being a victim, but then again, you got Winona Ryder trying to do an English accent, so it's probably.
Speaking of a victim, no.
Which is a whole episode within itself, which we'll be doing next week. But
we love you, Winona. She's like, fuck you.
We love you, Winona. You're great in Stranger Things. Yeah, I find that it's kind of one of these films, and it's a short film. I mean, I guess, they've taken, I don't know how many pages Dracula was, but I mean, Dracula took me about 2.5 weeks to get through, which normally, if you're looking at someone who actually reads about 2 books a week, it's quite a lengthy looking book. And I mean, yeah. I guess the audiobook probably slowed me down a little bit as well. So they, they did pare it down quite a lot. But it's still very, very effective. I think as a film on its own, as a film representing the book of Bram Stoker's Dracula, I think it fails. But as a film, just a Dracula film, I think it's superior to a lot of other films. I prefer these films over the Hammer Horror Dracula films for some reason.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly enough, if you do get the Blu-ray version of Dracula, at the same time that they were filming this version of Dracula, they were using the sets at night to shoot the Spanish version of Dracula.
Oh, interesting.
And because what Universal and other movie theaters are doing is that during the day they would shoot the English version, and at night they would shoot the Spanish version with the same sets, but would put the Spanish actors in there, or Latin American actors. Well, probably more Latin American than from Spain, but Spanish-speaking actors, I guess, is the best way to say it. And what's interesting is that if anyone gets a chance, and I highly suggest this, that the Spanish version of Dracula, 1931 Spanish Dracula, which is made on the same sets with a different director, is a lot better than this version.
Wow. Really?
Well, because it was...
was it a different director, you said, too?
It was a different director. The Dracula's play is slightly different. Mina's stronger. It's a stronger Mina character. It's almost the same script, but because they put a different... because the Spanish-speaking language puts a different emphasis on it. And another thing is that because they knew that they were shooting during the day, they figured we're going to do better. And the funny thing about it is that because of being American being quite prudy as far as sexual goes, the women are quite covered up, run up to the neck and stuff like this. Where in the Hispanic version is like they're all low-cut gowns, bodices are shown. The women come out, basically like in their granny nightgowns, in the American one. And this one, I mean, they got like almost like see-through like lingerie coming through.
Basically, Valley of the Dolls.
Yeah, pretty much so, without the hairpieces.
Is that a nightie you're wearing or a teddy?
And it does work on so many levels. I think when we were shooting the podcast, the last one that we shot, and you heard the Spanish film playing in the background. That's what I was watching.
Oh, one thing I did notice too is the orchestral pieces. The songs that are in the orchestral pieces are actually, it's almost like the theme song for Dracula that carries through to other films, which it didn't dawn on me until I was like what scene? I think it's when he comes and he's trying to get to Lucy. I was like, wait, I know this. I know I'm like, oh my God, they're actually using, so they did use the original theme to Dracula to replicate it for Bram Stoker and I feel like I've heard it for other things too. And I'm like, oh.
I also found it a bit bizarre that they used Swan Lake as the opening for the credits, which is like, oh, that's kind of, for some reason, I've seen this movie so many times that I never twigged. It's only now that it's twigged. So yeah, I'm very quick on the mark here. But it's only taken 55 years. But yeah, I thought that was quite interesting, actually. But I did find the ending very quick.
Yeah. Same as the book. It's very quick. Yeah.
Well, this was actually quicker because it's kind of like, at least you had like all these forces coming together, and then then the dispatching of Dracula kind of went poof, in the book. Here it's kind of like poof, and then he carries Mina down the stairs, and
by the way, you don't get to see it either, so you kind of know that he's staking Dracula, and then the camera goes over to Nina, and it's her like, like I'm coming back. And you're like, what's just happened? And then Jonathan and her kind of walk off, and that's it. And you're like, oh.
I also have to sit there and say that this 1931 doesn't actually feel like it's taking place in England. It feels American.
It does. I agree, especially when they're like conversing about how they're going to go about killing him. It seems very American.
Yeah, it's almost like that. Alfred Hitchcock, as you know, listeners, that we've been covering Alfred Hitchcock this season, and he had this thing about you put an English actor and people just think that they're rich and they're rich Americans, and I guess that's probably why we get this, because even though they might have English accents, but they just feel like they're like rich Americans. Yeah. And I think that's because we've been like, because of all these old films that we do watch, and they don't have an English accent, we don't think of them as English. We think of them as like rich Americans, because that's how they portray them. And so maybe that's why. But I thought to myself, I was like, they just, even the look of them, the way they were dressed, they look like, I guess it's supposed to be London, but it looked like they could be in Manhattan.
Yeah, I agree.
So, but I mean, overall, I think overall, it is a good film. I mean, I kind of wish that, I think if I was reviewing it on its own without the book comparison, I probably would be a lot more favorable to it. But I do think that the book kind of ruined the film slightly for me.
No, I agree. I mean, it's one of those things where when you see something that has such a level of detail to each of the characters and the accounts of all of the perspectives that each of them have, there's so many layers like an onion to the book versus the movie. You just kind of take it for what it is, right? You're like, oh, you immediately know at the start of the film that something's a little off about Dracula. In the book, there's still an apprehension, I guess, like that, there's something supernatural that Jonathan witnessed about him, but then when you kind of come back to London and you're seeing the circumstance of events that are happening, you're kind of just going for this, you're going along for the ride. Whereas this, it's like boom, you get, now Dracula's in London. Like I said, he got on the express boat. Somehow he got on that boat and he got there, and then he was like, I'm going to the opera and I'm going to go after and the other thing, he was like killing people left and right, which in the book he didn't do. Like it took time, and he was more meticulous in like what he was trying to achieve and what he was trying to go at, and there was more of a purpose, whereas this just seemed like, I'm going to come to London and I'm going to have a party in the town. know. So again, I take it for what it's
free. Going on a killing spree.
Yeah, and he was like killing one person, like that woman in the alley, and she's like, and I'm like, oh, he just killed her too. Okay, great. Awesome.
Let's do a kill count. But I think in the book, I mean, doesn't he feed off animals as well?
Yeah,
because he's feeding off animals and stuff like this. And I also have to sit there. I guess things are a bit different because we find out in the book that the reason why Renfield's gone mad is because Dracula's next door. He's literally next door.
Yeah.
To them in the old cathedral. And here it just felt like Dracula, he's living in a penthouse maybe, going out to the opera. Lucy dies because, she left her windows open to her high-rise flat because that's what it felt like. It didn't feel like she was
Lucy's drunk again. Oh no, she's dead.
Yeah. And it did have that kind of feeling like it was a little bit too cosmopolitan, where I think in the original novel, I think if this film had the same kind of look but set in the 1890s, like the way the book is set, I think it probably would have maybe given it a bit more feeling, because even like they were like they go like, we're in Whitby now, right, sort of thing, because Dracula's landed at Whitby, but then it's like then we still got this cosmopolitan New York City look to everyone.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel bad. I really feel bad for Renfield at the end of the movie. Now that I think about it, because all he was trying to do was his master is over, and then he's like, "Please don't kill me." I was like, "Poor Renfield, bye." Like threw him down the stairs.
Yeah, and I found that a bit. Yeah, there's kind of like, the whole Dracula, the essence sort of thing, and I have to say that the best thing in the film is Bela Lugosi, and it's a shame. And I think that this film was a blessing and a curse. It made him, but it cursed him at the same time because no one saw him as anything else, because he is bloody brilliant in this film.
Yeah, and people also take is not only the romanticized version of Dracula, but they almost take like this a caricature version of him, like, I want to suck your blood. Like they kind of, that's him, so every time that reference is kind of like him, and it kind of exudes from that.
Well, God, we got cereal based on it, Count Dracula. Count Dracula.
And then you have Sesame Street. Yeah, exactly. Right, count.
Yeah, and the count. 1,
2, 3, 4. Blue moon. Sorry, Belly.
but I guess as an after effect, Bela Lugosi himself, he played a lot of great roles, and he is one of those horror icons that I think that he was always better than some of the material that he was given. Like we'll be covering a lot of stuff. He did Murder in the Rue Morgue that we'll be covering in season 3. He did a couple Edgar Allan Poe films that we'll be covering in season 3. And when we get back to Bela, you'll notice that he was actually a good actor, and sometimes he was a lot better than some of the material he was given, which is kind of sad, really. Because then, of course, we do have the Bela Lugosi of Ed Wood. And by that time he was, was he a morphine addict at that time? He died just shortly before. It didn't help that, he got replaced in the film after he died by Ed Wood's chiropractor, wife's chiropractor.
Stop that.
Yeah, it's true.
You can't even pick someone who is like, here, let's just get him. Yeah, he looks like he can do this.
Yeah, just put a cape over your face.
Yeah.
But I have to say that Bela Lugosi, I full kudos to him for this film. I find that when he's not on screen, the film suffers a little bit. But when he's on screen, it's just like him and the vamps are what make this film.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny that he, like I said, he didn't have that much dialogue, Yeah.
Well, I think it also benefit that Tod Browning he didn't really like sound talkies. It wasn't his forte. And I think that's what helps the movie as well. It gives it its atmosphere because it's very much done on visuals. Everything's visuals and the way everything's put together. And I think that's probably what makes the film work. It's Tod Browning's direction, Bela Lugosi's Count Dracula, and Renfield, Dwight Frye's Renfield. And I find that Van Helsing I didn't find him very memorable in this film. Mina was weak. Lucy was weak. John Harker was gay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
gay.
I know, like, John, I'm sorry. I think you would rather be with Renfield at this point. So,
Yeah. And yeah, overall, I think it's a classic. I think it's one of those films that people should see. But yeah, the book ruined it for me. What about yourself, John?
yeah, I mean, I agree. Same. I remember seeing that movie probably 10 years ago, and so I rewatched it yesterday. Reading the book, it just changed. I was like, wait, oh my god, they didn't put this in. Oh, they didn't put that in. And you kind of, you want them to be like, oh, I wish I would have built these characters a little bit more. But I get it. Universal gets their hands on something sometimes, and it's more about the extraordinary of the supernatural than it is about the characters, about the story, I should say. So I get it. I mean, again, but I agree with you. I wish the film lived up to the book.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's, as we know, it's taken from, it's not from the book, it's actually based on the 1924 play.
Yeah.
I don't understand the Renfield characteristics of opening up with Renfield there. I understand the way that they made it work, but it doesn't make a lot of sense because it doesn't tie in all the other characters to Renfield there, because Renfield has no connection to anyone else.
Yeah.
And because we don't have the Dr. Seward part now. Apparently Renfield now Dr. Van Hasling's patient.
Yeah, that was his patient. Yeah.
We had Seward, who was engaged to Lucy, and then you had, Lucy, who knew Mina, and Mina, who knew Jonathan, because Jonathan gets involved in it, and it kind of tied it. The novel ties everything into, like, you can see how everyone got to know everything, because there are close links with everyone. Here, it just felt like there's no close links to anyone. It's kind of like, it's not even kismet that they met up. It felt like it was forced how everything came together.
Yeah, I mean, again, if you also have it as this movie was basically like the doctor is making a house call, and that's basically how the characters converge together, because something was happening with Lucy, and so let's call the doctor, and the doctor comes and goes, oh, well, I have this thing going on over here too, and maybe the two things are going together, where that's sort of how the characters kind of converge together, versus the novel, it's more of an insidious thing. There's more things going on that under the surface with all these characters. Now they all kind of converge together.
Well, see, I also thought that maybe I might be reaching out here, but I also found in the novel, what we have is you got Mina writing to Lucy, Mina writing to Jonathan writing to Mina why he's with Dracula, to the point where Dracula says, I'm going to deliver your letters. We don't know if he's not delivering the letters. He's actually reading the letters. And so, and by that time, Jonathan's writing to Mina and Whitby, though she's not getting the letters. So, and even though, Dracula is on his way over to England at that point, and the thing is that, we do have the whole killing of everyone there, and then the person tied to the steering wheel sort of thing, and he turned into a dog and runs off. But then you kind of wonder, did he pick Whitby specifically because he could go after Jonathan's Mina, but got Lucy instead, because by that time he doesn't know which from which.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's why that sets it up very easily as to why his intention is to come to London anyways, right? Yeah. But it's now I have even a purpose to make another bride, if you will, of mine.
Yeah. He stays in Whitby.
The one thing I do have to say about the movie, that the one you guys are going to cover next week, is Bram Stoker's Dracula, that ties in the Mina character and the want or the drive for Dracula more in that story, that it was a past love, a reincarnation. I think that's something that would have been very interesting if Bram Stoker had made that approach. That I think it would have really solidified the novel even more about the intentions of why Dracula is coming to Europe. I do think it was that this man, Jonathan, loves this woman so much, and I've read how much he loves her, and I kind of want to have that. I want to take that for myself.
Yeah, and I always, thinking back on it, I always kind of figured that maybe he got Lucy by mistake. He called Lucy the strongest, and because Mina was staying with Lucy at the time.
I mean, Lucy was also, again, Lucy, right? So she was very much she was a player. So I think it was just very easy to be like, wow, this is easy picking. Whereas Mina being who she is, she's more strong in character and will, right? That she fights, she even literally fights into the end that way mentally. So that's more of a game for him, a cat and mouse game, versus Lucy was just like, well, I do need to eat. So like, I'll just, have a little snack on Lucy here every once in a while. And while I'm working on this one over here, and, she's easy pickings, right?
Well, I also think that, I think we got two archetypes, which the movie doesn't make clear, which the novel makes it very clear. You have the girl who gets by on her looks, she's pretty, and then you got the guy then you got the other girl who's completely opposite, who gets by on her brains. Yes, one's a school teacher, one's a aristocrat.
And one doesn't need really a man. It's nice that she has Jonathan, but she doesn't need him to be her, right? Like she's gonna go to school and get educated and become what she is. Versus Lucy, really all she wants is to be in love, and she wants to find someone to be in love and get married, and
who'll take care of her.
And have little bats here and there flying around.
Well, I mean, Lucy wants someone to take care of her, where Mina wants to get married to take care of them. I guess
correct. Yes.
So, which is quite interesting. So, what are your final thoughts of Dracula, John?
Dracula was, again, it's great. I'm glad that we picked this. It's been something I've been wanting to do for a while. I think even since season 1. I really just am really happy that I read this. I highly suggest it to people, especially if you've been forced, like probably Keith and I, to read Pride and Prejudice. You sure in the hell can pick this book up, and it's worth the read. Pride and Prejudice, not to like pick on Jane Austen. It's a very different animal than this, whereas Dracula is, again, it's something that's fun to read, and there's the supernatural qualities. It's definitely something that the film in itself kind of brings to light in certain areas, but I love both. So, yeah.
And for me, I think, I highly recommend the book Dracula. I think if you like murder mysteries, it is a slow burn. But it's a slow burn for a reason, because everything that you're learning while it's slow burning until it starts, then it does pick up and kind of runs at a very halty pace. But it runs very fast when you get at the halfway point. But you actually realize that everything's connecting. All the dots are connecting. So it is like a big murder mystery to begin with, and that has that kind of vein. And when everything starts connecting, you feel quite bright. You feel very proud of yourself that you start connecting the dots. Yeah. So, and as far as the film goes, I think, it's a Tod Browning film, and I highly love Tod Browning films. I think he has a fantastic look to his films. I think Bela Lugosi is fantastic. As a film itself, I think it's a very, very good film. As a representation of the book, I think it falls a little flat, but I still think it's one of the Universal's crown jewels in their achievements through the years, in their hundreds and some odd years that they've been going. And I think, Dracula will outlive probably all of us, and I think the book would outlive us even more. But I do think that people need to read the book Dracula to get the real meaning of Dracula. I don't think there's actually been a fulfilling film version of Dracula that really explains the fantasticness of the way this book is put together.
I would also just like to add, if anyone was to remake Dracula again based on the novel, I would love the director who did the movie The Favorite to do it, because I love the stylistic and the quirkiness to it, but also the underlying sort of like dark humor to it that he was able to capture in that film. Have you seen the movie The Favorite?
No, I haven't.
Keith? So watch it, and you're going to be like, what the hell is going on? Because it's very Victorian. There's a sort of Victorian era-esque about it, but there's a modernist to it that I think it actually just leans into the characters and how they interact with one another. And I think that director should definitely do this. So,
see, I was thinking that if they did a film like this, and because of the way films are done, it'd be very interesting to do the film from the different points of view and do it exactly like the book, but from the different points of view, But instead of you might, like showing, instead of Mina sitting down writing, you don't want to see people writing, but you get like Mina like living through her day, so you see it through her perspective, and then we go to Lucy's perspective, and everyone's perspective, and even if it starts crossing over, you're kind of getting like, and I think that would be very interesting. I think you probably could do it like, probably make a nice little 2-3 episodes together.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. You would almost have to do a 2-episode arc, and have it be one part where it's the build up to what happens to Lucy, and then picks up after what happens to Lucy, and then carries through to then then the progression of what happens with Mina, and have it be that. That's a great idea.
And I think, I don't think that we need a stuffy version of it. I think every single version that we've had of Dracula has been slightly stuffy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You watch a favor, because this director just does the director and the writers for this, they do a fantastic job of not making, because you've seen period pieces, right? And you get a point where it's just a little too stuffy and a little too aristocratic, and the way they're
Abbey,
Yeah. And so I think to kind of strip that out, there's a way of doing that and making it also a little bit quirky and a little bit really insidious. And this director does a good job in pointing out a historical character that most people didn't know, and just the quirkiness to them, but also just the really jacked up nature about them. Like just how, and I think you could do that here. There's like each one of these characters are just have their own sort of motivation and chemistry to one another, and so it's interesting to see how they would be able to bring that again to life. And maybe there's a mini series, because it's a lot to also get to condense down from the novel.
Yeah, and I think another thing where a lot of film versions have lost is actually that there is, like you said, there's a lot of quirky humor in the book, and the characters themselves are all a little quirky. Even the American's quirky. And you got, Seward's a little bit quirky, and Quincy's quirky, and Hawkins and Mina are quirky, and Lucy's quirky, and it seems like they always tend to play these people very straight. And I think that you can bring fun into it, and then and make it really interesting and give it an interesting feel, like what you're saying from your director, which I will check out the favorites.
I remember I was watching that film with my friend, and my friend's like, what the hell are we watching? I'm like, I don't know, but I love it, because I'm so used to like Jane Austen. You're like, oh God, here we go. What is the story going to be? And then you're like, oh crap. Oh, you're like, and it's of that time and that era, and you're like, okay, I can go with this. I can do this.
Actually, as a side note, if people out there who like vampires, there's this New Zealand film that's kind of done like a documentary called "We Live in the Shadows." It's about these 4.
I love it.
Well, they made a TV series now.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it's just brilliant and really funny.
Oh God, it's fantastic. My favorite is the psychic vampire, because everyone knows one of them.
Well, wait, are you talking about the one that's in the office? The one that's like the sucks alive? Yeah, it's so good. He's like, I'm a life force stealer, and he's like, it's in the office, and he's like the annoying person that always does shit in the office that drives you crazy. But that's how he's stealing your life force. It's really good.
And when he meets the emotional one, and we all know an emotional vampire as well. Like everything's a drama. And they're trying to outdo each other. That was fantastic. But yeah, that's a fantastic series.
And the rumor is they're actually trying to, because in the movie they allude to the Lycans, like the whole werewolf group. The rumor is they're trying to do a companion series based on building those characters out. So the difference between the Lycans and the vampires, and like how their clans are.
I have to sit there and say they really pulled out of the hat. And then the 4th episode where they're on trial.
Oh, yeah,
it was classic. So sorry to digress away from Dracula, but it does. But we at least kept to the vampire theme.
Exactly.
So yeah, fantastic series. But the Dracula does feed into the We Live in the Shadows. So anyone that wants to, I suggest watching the FX series We Live in the Shadows, based on the New Zealand film We Live in the Shadows. Fantastic. So.
There is something deep within calling you, entrancing you every thought. As you feel your thirst build, you try to resist, but you are compelled to give in to the urge. to head on over to our website at llpodcast.com to check out all of our bloody good past episodes, become a undead patron, and read our reviews of books to screens and everything in between. For our next podcast, we'll be continuing our theme of the month, Dracking to and Fro, with Francis Ford Coppola's 1992 film Bram Stoker's Dracula, as well as the 1979 film Love at First Bite. We would like to thank you, our children of the night, for downloading, liking, and sharing the Literary License podcast. Now go make sweet music in the night. Bye.
Bye.
I'll be loyal to you, Master. I'll be loyal.
No, he's a nice one.
And after you deliver the message, you will remember nothing, I now say. Obey.
The railway arch, confessional. I wrote your name in white emotion. Drift away with silver faces on display. Wake up in an ice cold sweat, and my skin starts to creep. You're hovering above my bed, looking down on me. Haunted half sound effects, Dracula theme. Lover boys, last resort. Secretly called, it gets away car. Lucky stars, rattle the jaws, the drawing board. Wake up in an ice cold sweat, and my skin starts to creep. You're hovering above my bed, looking down on me. Haunted half sound effects, Dracula tease. Dracula tease. A lipstick on my pillow, light in my sheet. The full moon's glowing yellow, and the floorboards creak. I say hurry feet. A threatening behavior bounces round my mind. Enthusiasm, paraphernalia, all over the side. Dracula tea, Dracula tea. The pinball machine's on mute.
Your will is strong, Van Helsing.